Welcome to Rhode Island, specifically Newport, Rhode Island. This is on one of the islands off of the mainland. It was originally an outpost, and as it grew, it became a major trading port. So the main part of town was built around the square. This is the district court building that they're updating constantly to make sure these old buildings will stay looking old. This is the Old Colony House. The Old Colony House was originally built in the 1600s with wood. It was upgraded in the 1700s with brick because they wanted to make the parade ground, the square, even more important looking by adding the brick buildings around. So they remodeled everything as they got older. The residence will be right down the street from the courthouse, from the town square. Wood was plentiful, so their houses were generally made out of wood, clapboard, so it goes down. Top roofs are very steep to make sure that the snow falls off of it, keeps the rain out, keeps the snow out, built close together. It was too cold to have a actual farming. However, they did have subsistent gardens so they could feed their own families. Their cemeteries were right next to the church, so that being a small community, obviously is cold. Everything's going to be closely around. There were no cars back then for obvious reasons. But you can see how closely built everything was. You did not want to have to leave. Going back to the cemetery, you have to remember how cold it is when in the winter time. They're going to have their cemeteries, their churches, their markets, their banks, their houses, their schools all together in one convenient little area so that they do not have to walk very far because they don't want to get cold. Massachusetts was a Puritan colony, but Roger Williams moved down to Rhode Island because he thought that people had a right to have their choice of how they believed in Jesus and how they believed in God. This was one of the first churches. It was much smaller. They outgrew it in the early 1700s, rebuilt it, and now this is an Anglican church. About a 5-minute walk away from the Anglican church, you will find the Baptist church. And less than 5 minutes from the Baptist church, we have the Methodist church. The economics of New England based itself off of the trees, which I'm not going to show you the trees. Anytime I try to take pictures of trees, all you can see are trees. And trees by themselves are just sort of boring. But they had lots of trees and they had lots of water. So they used the trees, they made themselves boats. They put the boats in the water and they could trade back and forth between England and America, which is where they made all of their money. This particular wharf right here was actually made by Benedict Arnold, who is going to be a general in the Revolutionary War, who's going to switch sides and become English instead and betray the United States. He's a traitor, but until then, he made this cool little wharf. Even though the geography was not the most beneficial out of all of the colonies, the New England colonies had what it took, mostly the ports, which allowed them to trade with England, trade with each other. They had fishing, they had whaling, which we don't need to do anymore. They were able to ship off all of the goods to England, get the money back. They had the shipbuilding from the trees. You can see the trees on the hills in the background over there. They had pretty much everything they needed to be successful politically, economically, and culturally.